How strong is the United States military really? We often throw around words like superpower or hegemony, but let's look at the raw data. As of 2025, the United States maintains a presence in approximately 128 countries, operating over 1,200 military bases of various sizes across the globe. It is a logistical web that spans the planet. But if you compare these static bases to what lies in the water, they pale in comparison. The true source of American projection, the element that keeps rival admirals awake at night, isn't a concrete bunker in Europe. It is the wandering giants of the high seas. Among the numbered fleets of the United States Navy, there is one that stands apart. It is the largest, the most forward deployed, and arguably the most lethal fighting force ever assembled in maritime history. It sits at the tip of the spear in the most volatile region on Earth. I am talking, of course, about the U.S. 7th Fleet. Theoretically, this single fleet possesses enough firepower to dismantle the military infrastructure of any medium-sized nation overnight. But is it really invincible? If it were pitted against a near-peer adversary, or the entirety of the Russian Navy today, how long would the battle actually last? To understand the 7th Fleet, you first have to look at the map. If you analyze the U.S. military's global posture in 2025, a startling fact emerges. The Pentagon has stacked its sharpest fangs and its heaviest armor in one specific region, the Indo-Pacific. This is an accident. Look at Japan. The U.S. has crammed 121 military bases into that island nation, the highest density of American overseas bases in the world. Next door in South Korea, another 90 bases are on standby. These installations form a dense spiderweb, effectively locking down the critical choke points of East Asia. Overseeing this massive chessboard is the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Its area of responsibility is, frankly, terrifying in scale. It stretches from the U.S. West Coast to the western border of India, and from the frozen waters of the Arctic to the ice shelves of Antarctica. That is more than 50% of the Earth's surface. You cannot control half the planet with just static land bases. You need mobility. You need the 7th Fleet, headquartered in Yokosuka, Japan, with major footprints in Sasebo, Okinawa, South Korea, and Singapore. It is the largest forward-deployed fleet in the U.S. Navy. Now, critics often point out that the 7th Fleet only has about 27,000 personnel. In the context of great power competition, that sounds small. How does a force of 27,000 hold the line for half the world? The answer lies in the density of firepower per sailor. Let's look at the order of battle. At any given time, the 7th Fleet commands between 50 to 60 warships and 150 aircraft. The crown jewel is the Carrier Strike Group, currently anchored by the USS George Washington. They are floating sovereign Air Force bases. A Nimitz-class supercarrier displaces 100,000 tons. Its air wing includes 4 squadrons of strike fighters, a mix of Super Hornets and the F-35C fighters, along with the Advanced Hawkeye for airborne early warning. A single carrier air wing generates more sorties and delivers more ordnance than the entire air forces of many nations. And the George Washington never travels alone. It is encased in a protective bubble provided by a Ticonderoga-class cruiser and a squadron of Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. These aren't just escorts. They are Aegis-equipped missile trucks capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously and engaging threats from the edge of space down to the wave tops. But if the carrier is the fist, the brain is a ship you might not expect. It doesn't have massive guns or missile silos. It's the USS Blue Ridge, the fleet command ship. While it looks unassuming, the Blue Ridge is the nerve center. It is packed with advanced communications gear, 13 satellite telephone terminals, over 70 transmitters, and 100 receivers. It processes battlefield data at incredible speeds, fusing intelligence from satellites, aircraft, surface ships, and submarines into a single, real-time common operating picture. This allows the fleet commander to coordinate hundreds of units as if they were a single organism. In modern warfare, the side that processes information faster usually wins. The Blue Ridge ensures the 7th Fleet observes, orients, decides, and acts faster than any adversary. It realizes the concept of look, shoot, kill in near real time. But even this surface power is just the tip of the iceberg. The 7th Fleet's true nightmare scenario capability lies beneath the waves. If the surface fleet is a fortress, the submarine force is a dagger hidden in the sleeve. The Indo-Pacific theater is home to the most aggressive concentration of U.S. submarine power. We are talking about access to potentially 30-plus nuclear-powered submarines across the Pacific theater, rotating through bases like Guam and Yokosuka. This is where the asymmetric advantage becomes overwhelming. Every single submarine in the U.S. inventory is nuclear-powered. This means they're limited only by food stores. They can stay submerged for months, moving at high speeds without surfacing to snorkel like conventional diesel-electric subs used by many regional powers. The fleet utilizes upgraded Los Angeles-class boats, the highly advanced Virginia-class, and elite Seawolf-class, built during the Cold War to hunt Soviets in the deep blue. But the most terrifying asset is the Ohio-class SSGN. These are former ballistic missile submarines converted to carry cruise missiles. A single SSGN can carry 154 Tomahawk land attack missiles. Think about that, 154 missiles. That is more firepower in one submerged hull than an entire surface action group of destroyers. A single SSGN surfacing off a coastline and unloading its magazines can decapitate leadership targets, destroy air defense grids, and cripple command centers before the enemy even knows a war has started. This hidden, credible threat is the bedrock of the Seventh Fleet's deterrence. Amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. The reason the Seventh Fleet can project this power indefinitely is its basing architecture. The U.S. naval base in Yokosuka, Japan, is unique. It is the only overseas base capable of home porting a nuclear aircraft carrier. This is a strategic game changer. Without Yokosuka, carriers would have to rotate back to the West Coast or Hawaii for maintenance and refit, adding weeks of transit time and burning fuel. With Yokosuka, the carrier is already in theater. It can sortie and be in war zone in days, not weeks. Then you have Guam. If Yokosuka is the frontline trench, Guam is the supply depot and the strategic bomber hub. Guam is geographically perfect. It sits far enough from the Asian mainland to be outside the range of many tactical weapons and artillery, yet close enough that strategic bombers like the B-1, B-2, and B-52 can fly combat missions and return without needing excessive refueling. The U.S. is currently fortifying Guam to levels unseen since World War II. They are pouring in advanced missile defenses like THAAD and Aegis ashore, stockpiling millions of gallons of fuel and expanding munition depots. Guam serves as the anchor that connects the forward forces in Japan and Korea to Hawaii and the U.S. mainland. It secures the supply lines to Australia. It is the unsinkable aircraft carrier of the Central Pacific. So, we have established that the Seventh Fleet is a behemoth. But unlike in the past, when we might compare it to the fading Russian Navy or European allies, today, there is only one comparison that matters. How does the Seventh Fleet stack up against the Chinese PLA Navy? Let's be clear, China is not the Soviet Union of the 1980s. The PLA Navy is the largest navy in the world by hull count. They are churning out modern warships like the Type 055 destroyers, ships that are arguably on par with or even exceed the capabilities of Arleigh Burkes in terms of missile capacity and radar technology. China also has its own aircraft carriers. The Liaoning and Shandong provided training, but the new Fujian, with electromagnetic catapults, is a direct technological rival to the USS Gerald R. Ford. The PLA Navy operates under protective umbrella of land-based air power and the formidable carrier killer ballistic missiles like the DF-21D and DF-26. This creates a lethal anti-access and area denial bubble that the Seventh Fleet must penetrate. However, there are critical differences. While China's shipbuilding is impressive, the Seventh Fleet has two distinct advantages. First, submarine warfare. While China's surface fleet is modern, its submarine force still lags in acoustic stealth. U.S. nuclear submarines remain quieter and more lethal. Second, strategic depth. China's naval power is concentrated in the first island chain. The Seventh Fleet doesn't operate in a vacuum. It is backed by the U.S. Third Fleet in the Eastern Pacific. If a war kicks off, the numbered fleets integrate. The U.S. can surge 2, 3, or even 4 carrier strike groups into a single theater. That surge capacity, the ability to flood a zone with overwhelming force from multiple axes, is something China is still developing. There is one final factor that tech specs and tonnage charts don't show: experience. The 7th Fleet has been fighting in these waters since 1943. It was born in the fires of World War II, crushing the Imperial Japanese Navy at Leyte Gulf. It patrolled the Taiwan Strait during the Cold War crises. It supported the Korean War and Vietnam War. It executed the massive logistics of the Gulf War. Every ship in the 7th Fleet sits on top of 80 years of institutional knowledge. They know the currents, the thermoclines for sonar, the weather patterns. They have perfected carrier operations, underway replenishment, and damage control through decades of continuous operations. China hasn't fought a major naval war in over a century. While they drill aggressively, their soft power of combat doctrine, damage control under fire, and complex carrier strike coordination is theoretically improving in high-intensity combat. New navies can build hulls, but they cannot build 80 years of combat heritage overnight. So, is the 7th Fleet invincible? The answer is no. No force is. As powerful as it is, the 7th Fleet faces a changing world. The proliferation of Chinese anti-ship ballistic missiles, hypersonic weapons, and increasingly quiet diesel-electric submarines creates a deadly environment near the Asian mainland. The Castle of Steel is facing the era of the missile. However, as of late 2025, the 7th Fleet remains the premier maritime fighting force on the planet. It is not just a collection of ships. It is a networked system of systems, from the sea floor to space, designed to dominate the escalation ladder. To answer the opening question, against a modernized PLA Navy, a conflict would be brutal, bloody, and devastating for both sides. It would not be the one-sided affairs of the past. But the 7th Fleet's combination of technological edge, subsurface dominance, and deep institutional experience still makes it the heavyweight champion of the Pacific. The 7th Fleet is a muscle-bound giant, yes, but it is a giant with a sniper's eye and a marathon runner's endurance. And for now, that keeps the peace in the Pacific.